welcome to Money Matters TV. I'm your host, Doug Hepburn of Hepburn Financial Advisors, located in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, a boutique wealth management firm providing trusted advice to successful individuals, businesses, and families for over 20 years. I'd like to welcome my co-host today, Dana Crouse, Vice President of Northwest Bank. Northwest Bank is not affiliated with Cetera Advisors. Dana, how are you? What's good in your world
Hi, Doug.
these days? What's good in your
How are
world
you?
these days?
Well, as you probably heard, rates will be dropping around September 18th, about 25 basis points. And from what the Fed's saying, they'll be lowering them about a point by the end of the year from where we are today. Some other things that are going on, inflation is easing up a bit. And Northwest Bank encourages clients not to hold off on financing until rates are lower to work with your relationship manager and submit your loan packages now. You never want to put off business needs for financing.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, from a big picture perspective, though, we've been told for months now, close to a year, rates are coming down. Oh, the Fed's ready to drop rates when conditions warrant it. And so we saw them say that in the fourth quarter of 2023. Markets jumped. It didn't happen. Hasn't happened all year. While they're signaling that rates may come down, that's not really definite, though, is it?
It's saying September 18th, so we will see.
Yeah,
that's why I highly suggest don't put off your financing needs waiting for rates to come down, because we can always get you financing.
That's right. And, the other thing is, if rates drop and then you've got all these people trying to get through the door at the same time, it makes it
then there's a mad rush and longer lead times to get financing in place.
So the key word of advice here is plan ahead.
Correct.
Right?
Come prepared, bring a financial package, start talking now, and work on, your projected financing. And, hopefully the rates do come down for clients, and that's a win-win for everybody at the end of the year, being a point lower.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great. But, from your lips to God's ears, I'll wait until it happens before I say it's there. Because we've seen this play out before, where we hear the anticipation of rates coming down and it doesn't happen. I know one of the things that may be baked into the numbers, a lot of people are concerned about what may happen in the elections, and if they get an unexpected or an expected result, depending on what that may be, it could mean a change in government policy, which could change how businesses react to whether or not Congress is going to spend and government's going to restructure or what have you. And there's a lot of stuff on the table these days to digest in terms of the policy statements that candidates are putting out. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I've seen information that indicates that many businesses are holding off on making business decisions because of the potential changes due to the election. But again, always plan ahead. And,
that's right.
If you can be first to market and first to take advantage of that, you have a greater opportunity for success.
That's right.
On another note, we had a recent data breach in a major provider and aggregator of personal information. What does Northwest Bank do to protect clients from fraud?
In speaking with your relationship manager, there's lots of different ways to protect yourself from fraud. One of them being have a continuity plan in place.
Right.
Speak with your relationship manager about fraud protection services. There are services out there that can protect them. Positive pay, fraud filters, and account alerts.
Right.
Using a commercial card is a good one. We highly suggest not to use a business debit card because that's
yeah,
a leadway to your major asset in your working capital.
I can see that. I can see that. Well,
Um,
we got a viewer question today from Gene Keller of Philadelphia, who asks, "What are the 3 financial statements needed when dealing with an investment banker?"
Income statement, balance sheet, and statement of cash flows.
Okay, yeah, and those are your standard financial statements. The income statement is really uh, the transactions that have occurred over the last year. The balance sheet is really a snapshot in time, and the statement of cash flows is what ties those two together and gives a knowledgeable third party, the reviewer of the statements, to actually see what's going on. Where is money going within the business? So, great question. Gene, thanks for sending that in. If there's something you'd like to ask, here's how to send your questions to Money Matters TV.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, MONEY, -matters, MATTERS, TV.com.
It seems like every other week we hear about some story of a data breach that's exposed millions, if not billions, of names and personal information of people to cyber criminals and leaving them at risk. To better understand the gravity of this issue, I'd like to welcome our guest, Matt Barnett of SEVN-X, which is a cyber consultancy working with businesses to help protect them against cyber fraud and intrusion. Matt, welcome to Money Matters TV.
Hey, thanks, Doug.
Glad you could be here.
Hey, Dana.
So tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and how you got into cybersecurity.
Yeah, I think the one thing I heard somebody else say it, so I'll steal it. But my whole career has kind of been a series of clerical errors where I started out as a paramedic, and then when I applied to be a police officer, somebody looked at my resume and thought, paramedic, that'd be a good addition to the team. And then when I went for cybersecurity, somebody looked at my resume and thought, police officer, that'd be a good addition to the team. So kind of have always done things in that security and thriving in chaos space. And, cybersecurity is kind of where I've found my niche and have been here for about the past 10 years or so.
Fantastic. So how does an organization test cybersecurity?
It's kind of an interesting world because in our space, right, the thing that we're trying to prevent is an attack. And so if you think about a fire suppression system trying to prevent a fire, we test it with a fire drill. We test it by evacuating the building, or at least pre-COVID, we used to have to evacuate buildings. But with cybersecurity, we kind of have to do things a little bit differently, right? We actually have to not just pull that alarm, but also, run the sprinkler system and make sure it's actually working. It would actually put out a fire. And so what most companies will do is they will hire a firm like ours to emulate what a threat actor might do. So if somebody would try to break in and password guess their way into somebody's email, well, that's what we'll do.
Is that like a white hat hacker?
That's exactly what it is. Yep. So
okay.
the white hat hackers are the good guys. We're the ones who do what the black hats do, but we don't actually get to keep all the money we take. Unfortunately.
Well, but that's a good thing because you're working for your clients, and I'm sure you get paid for that.
Correct.
So, what are the trends or big risks in cybersecurity for organizations these days?
A long time ago, we figured out how to build a firewall, right? And we've made some really good technology, some really good endpoint protection software. So that part of it is really become, I guess, the part we figured out. And so the big risk to organizations now is the end user. It's all those scams that you see come up, and the creating this sense of urgency for users, whether that's, to entice them to win something or get something like a gift card, or whether it's fear of losing their job or fear of something, going offline, or whatever the case may be. A lot of the current trends in cybersecurity are really starting with compromising end users, whether that's their email or their corporate credentials or something like that.
Yeah, I know we go through cybersecurity training all the time, and I think that's valuable stuff. Dana, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
I do. Matt, how does an organization test cybersecurity?
Yeah, so that's kind of where we'll actually, let's just say there's an email system for an organization and it's behind a username and password. Well, we might go out and go to LinkedIn and see who works for that company, download a list of the users, figure out what the email convention is, and then we would start password guessing against it and see if some users are using a weak or easily guessable password. That might get us into their email account. And if we get it from there, we might send an email to somebody internally in the organization to try to get them to give us access to a VPN, which might put us on the internal network. And so a lot of cybersecurity testing is really about finding that one small, gap in the armor, and then exploiting that to get to another piece, to another piece, to another piece, where ultimately we're trying to go after whatever the quote unquote crown jewels of the organization might be. So sometimes with an organization that would be, access to all of the Windows computers, or it might be access to the bank account system. It might be access to all of the member data. It could be tax returns. It's kind of whatever the proprietary information is for that organization. That's the thing that we're after as part of the testing.
So what are the most common scams that you're seeing right now?
Well, with the advent of AI, we have really cleaned up all of this fraudulent phishing, vishing, smishing, right? So to clarify, phishing is kind of the well understood one. It's the attacks that come in through email where, they're asking you to do something, click on a link, takes you to a place, does bad things. Well, now we're starting to see these things happen over the phone too. So your phone might ring. It might say that it's your corporate help desk, and they may tell you that there's a problem with your account and it needs to be reset, but you have to use a very specific password. And so they actually tell you what password to set. You set it, and then they use that account and log in, or use that password to log into your account. And then the last one that we're seeing a lot of is these attacks that come in through smishing, or through SMS-based phishing. So that's your, excuse me, that's your classic package has been delivered to your house, or, Amazon is charging you for a brand new iPhone, or the IRS is, sending you some kind of a link, all through text message.
Wow, that's interesting. I just an aside, I happened to get a phone call from somebody in Missouri, of all places, telling me that they received a FedEx package from me with my number on it. And I said, really? That can't be right. I didn't send anything there. So,
did you ever figure out what it was?
I just ignored it.
Yeah.
Don't call back. If it's that important, they'll reach out again.
That's true. That's kind of the big piece of advice. And, we can certainly chat about it in a little bit, but that right there, that taking that few minutes and just, go get a cup of coffee, go do something, do anything but respond to whatever it is for 10 minutes. 9 times out of 10, you'll figure out, that it's scam or it's fraud or something. Your logic center will eventually kick back in and say, all right, this is clearly not a real threat.
Matt, how is corporate security different than individual security?
Money. Sorry. It's the first thing that comes to mind. Organizations spend a lot of money protecting their assets, right? They have multi-factor authentication on everything, or at least they should. They have endpoint protection. So think antivirus on steroids with a bulletproof vest. They kind of have all these email gateways and advanced phishing mitigation and all of these kind of best of breed products. And home users are still kind of using the free Norton 360 that comes with their Comcast account. So the barrier, the protections that are available to users are a lot lower. And it gets worse because users are more susceptible to that fear element. So, if I'm going to lose my company $1,000, maybe that matters, maybe it doesn't. I mean, it always matters, right? But maybe it's not as bad. But if I'm going to lose $1,000 out of my personal bank account, now I'm really invested in this problem, right? You've got me.
Right.
You've got your hooks into me. And so the barrier to hacking people when you're dealing with their personal lives is much greater than when you're dealing with the corporate one. And again, right, we couple that with a lower amount of security, less bulletproof vests, less armor. People tend to be easier targets for attackers.
Right. I know you mentioned, how people can reduce some of their risks of being victimized, like using two-factor authentication and really just taking a pause on those emails that want you to take action right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's urgent. You're going to lose your access to your email if you don't respond to this right away. But, what tools or other techniques are available to individuals to help them reduce the risk of being victimized?
So the biggest one, again, it's always going to come down to the brain. The brain is the gateway to all of the, the threats that you're going to face. It's always going to be a social engineering attempt, and whether that's coming in through the phone or coming in through your email or coming in through some other medium to you, that first initial processing that happens at the brain, that's where you've got to be able to take that step back, recognize that these things are coming, they're going to keep coming. The ability to send these types of campaigns at scale is only getting easier for attackers. The more data breaches we have, the more our information is published, the more people know about us, the more these scams are coming. So step one is just to understand that they are there, and just, again, right, being aware of them in the same way that you're aware of drunk drivers on the highway. Not everybody driving down the highway is drunk, but to look out for those, to avoid them, and to kind of take your time. So step one, just kind of be aware of the things that are out there. As you mentioned, multi-factor authentication. So that is putting a second layer between you and whatever it is you're trying to access, or whatever the case may be. It might be your email. So a username, a password, plus a token off of your smartphone, or a username and a password plus a hard token that goes on a USB drive that goes into your computer. Or right. So there's all of these ways, but the true definition of multi-factor authentication is always something you have plus something or something you have, something with something that you are. So that could be your biometrics, could be your facial identification, it could be your fingerprint, could be your retinal scan, could be your voice, but it's always two of those, right? And in any combination, to try to make it harder for attackers to gain access to your accounts, to your, your bank, to your email, etc. And then the other one is kind of having just those mild, antivirus softwares, right? So your Norton 360s or your McAfee's or your, I don't advocate for any one particular brand. I mean, personally, I think all home-based antivirus is kind of trash, but
it's better than nothing.
It's better than nothing, right? So, but recognize and don't have a false sense of security that you've downloaded and installed this antivirus software and now you're immune. Right. Vaccines only go so far. So, right.
Very good point.
Yeah. So can't protect you from yourself all the time, but yeah, it's a good step, and it's better than doing nothing. And then just being aware of what's out there.
I have another question. National Public Data and aggregator of data for background checks was recently breached. Can you tell us how that would affect the public?
Yeah. So anytime you have these massive data aggregators, but think Cambridge Analytica in the past, think National Public Data, think any of these brokerages that make it their business to deal in data, um, you've got a huge target on your back from attackers, because gaining access to that gets them access to everything. And in this case, this is access to social security numbers for uh, most of, if not all of the entire country. So we really have to be aware that now that that information is out there, and we've always kind of assumed that it's out there in one form or another for every American, but now it's definitely out there for all Americans, or, a huge portion of them at least. So just expect the scams, and expect that, these things are going to happen at a volume we probably haven't seen in the past.
Right. Well, but with all that information, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is, okay, if somebody's got birth date and social security number and your address and full name, legal name,
Yep.
Now chances are they can go out and get credit. They can buy stuff in your name. Should we all be doing like a credit lockdown just to avoid that from happening?
Yeah, so technically, what I would expect to happen is a lot of times when you have these breaches, what ends up happening is there is a discovery or a forensics discovery that happens, and it's usually paid for by the insurance company. It's done through kind of the remediation process of a data breach. National Public Data should have a record of everybody that is affected in this, and then they would send out a notification that says, hey, your information has been compromised. Here's what we're doing about it. And that could be credit monitoring. It could be identity protection. It could be reimbursement for something, whatever the case may be. They're going to figure out how to make it right to whatever, standard they have to. So I would just be on the lookout for the notification from National Public Data that, that you've been compromised or you've been affected as part of a data breach, and here's what you can do about it.
Man, the claim for that's got to be huge.
Think about when Experian was breached, right? They just had, they had to notify all of their customers.
Yep.
But, the other thing is, be aware of the scams that are going to come from this too. So you could think of people going out there and registering a domain, National Public Data Breach 2024, and it's just emailing people, hey, you've been affected. Click here to sign up for identity monitoring. Put in your social security number, right? So you can see how this goes and how easy it is, right? Because you're scaring people. Hey, your social security number's out there. Blah, blah, blah. Sign up for this thing with us. We'll protect you. Of course, here's my information. Take it.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but that makes perfect sense.
Yep.
Matt, what's the best way that the general public can stay up to date on data breaches, security best practices, and where they can learn about best practices?
So there's a lot of different, and it depends on how technical you want to be. If you're really in the weeds, if you really kind of nerd out on all the technical stuff, there is a Reddit forum known as NetSec, and that is where all of the really super technical data gets dropped. Anytime somebody comes out with a new exploit, or there's a new, they call them CVEs, or critical vulnerabilities and exposures, that basically these new attacks that have not been seen before, they get released there. So you can kind of get some information out of that. There used to be a really big following on cybersecurity and on X or formerly Twitter, but following the news, following a lot of professionals in the industry that put things out. There's a few specific people, and I can give you guys kind of a list if you want to share them with your users.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, man. This has been a phenomenal wealth of information for our viewers, and I really appreciate that. Thanks, Matt, for being our guest today and providing such great information for our viewers. I also want to thank my co-host Dana Crouse. You did a great job, and certainly all the people that work behind the scenes to make Money Matters TV possible. Be sure to tune in to our next show with Sean Sorry, a partner at Markham LLP. Most importantly, we want to thank you, our viewers, for tuning into Money Matters TV, where your money matters.